quarter after 9 on Labor Day Monday. I am on my way to the Woodstock Nostalgia Show, which, for those of you who follow the channel, it's one I go to often. You've seen me pick a lot of things up there. It opens up at 9:30, so I'll be getting there right around that time to get in. Usually here, I pick up things like trading cards, paper ephemera, advertising pieces. That's the sort of thing I'm normally looking for. I used to get lots of records here anyways. And then small collectibles, like toys and things like that as well. This time, it's gonna be different. For my American friends on here, unfortunately, President Trump struck down a over 100-year-old law called the de minimis tariff regulation. So basically what that meant was that I could ship items, anyone in the world could ship items into the United States duty-free and tariff-free. There weren't tariffs before anyways, but duty-free and tariff-free so long as the item was worth $800 or less. And the reasoning, anyways, in his big beautiful bill, that was set to be eliminated so that everything that came in, even packages from grandma, would now face tariffs and duties. I used to ship from the United States my items to try and save my, especially when I was shipping on eBay, my American customers order delays, which still happened regardless. And you would get to use the United States Postal Service, which most of them weren't familiar with, and it was a little more seamless if I did it that way. Cheaper for me too and them. Unfortunately, that has been struck down. It was supposed to end in 2027 because that was in the big beautiful bill. But now, instead of being, then he wrote an executive order ending it on August 29th, so it's done. So that means right now I can't ship into the United States. Canada Post isn't even shipping into the United States for the moment because they have been given no real guidance as to how the border services, U.S. Border Services, wants to handle this, because now they're going to have to look at a lot more packages, and they, I don't think, know how that is going to happen yet. So it's a bit of a, what's the word? It's a word I can't say on here right now. So what it'll mean is that things in the United States will get more expensive for American customers. It'll mean for a lot of Canadian sellers that I've seen lots of vintage stores this week basically saying, like, we're done, we're not shipping in the United States. That'll mean a cut in their income. It's certainly going to affect mine as well. And I understand why it was done. Large corporations like Temu and Shein from China were taking advantage of something that it wasn't designed to do. And I understand that. But the rest of us are just small mom and pop shops. I don't really think it's fair to apply that to us because they were the ones who were abusing it. The de minimis was originally eliminated for China and Macau and Hong Kong several months ago, actually. And but we were still allowed to ship in, but now obviously we've been stopped. And again, I understand why that is, but maybe a little more selective and, helping your Canadian friends out and your own American citizens with choice and lower prices, frankly. So now stuff there will get a lot more expensive. And that's unfortunate because it's just people collecting things, Anyway, so today when I'm going shopping, I'm going to have to sort of change the thing. Things I would have bought before because I'm like, oh, that'll sell on eBay. Oh, that'll sell. I have an American customer who'll buy that in the United States that I know. That will no longer happen, and I will have to leave stuff behind. And that's unfortunate because it's going to affect the dealers here, and there's just a cascading effect all the way down at this point. So it's unfortunate. I still love my American friends. I still love America. I think you guys are great. Just, wish we could be a little more friendly again in terms of, trade and things like that. But anyways, it is what it is. So anyways, I'm going in today. I'm going to have a look around and see what's what. And hopefully I can find some stuff that I will be able to move in onto the store, some things from my own personal collection. And let's face it, I have zero discipline anyway, so I'm going to see stuff and be like, I don't care, I'm going to buy that anyways. I might not be able to sell it right away, but who cares? It's cool. That's what I've done my whole life. So yeah, hopefully we'll be back at the shop and I'll have some stuff to show y'all. If not, I'm just going to post this anyways. And just to sort of show you what happens, I think, when politics gets in the way and government gets in the way of people. All right, sorry to get political if that's what that was taken as. It's not. I still love everybody. Bye. Okay, so it is not the Labor Day weekend anymore. It is nearly a full month on from that. It is the end of September now. I thought I filmed this and posted it, but I didn't. And in between, my life got really, really chaotic in a big way. And so I just sort of forgot about this. And I was scrolling back to look at something from this haul. Just to see, and I realized, hey, that video isn't there. And when I went back to look today, just to sort of figure out where I was on this is the problem when you don't post your videos like immediately. I realized that a bunch of stuff had been deleted. Some of the interior things, I went through a couple of record crates, and that's not there. So what you get is my intro, a few scenes from the inside, and this. I will tell you this. I believe there's a shot of me flipping through 3 or 4 Beach Boys records, including Pet Sounds. And I'm sure you all immediately jumped up and screamed and said, oh my God, grab the Pet Sounds. Yes. That dealer was different. I have been doing this pretty much my whole life. My parents were collectors. They took me to antique shows, collectible shows, antique stores, nostalgia shows, everything. Starting in the late, basically right around 1980 was when they started collecting heavy. I have been all over Southern Ontario, most of the eastern seaboard of the United States, down south. I have been everywhere within driving distance. All the big shows, Brimfield, all the big paper shows, all that stuff. And occasionally you run across these dealers who have something that they know is worth something, but they don't really know how to price it. So what they do is they leave it and then they say, make an offer. But then when you make an offer, they say, I don't know. And I'm like, well, what kind of price do you have in mind? And sometimes they don't. They really don't. They don't. What they're waiting for is you to say some gargantuan number, and then they'll do it. But unless they hear that number, they're not going to tell you what that number is, which is hard because then the seller is left in the position to buy it and sell it technically, because you have to figure out what that person wants for it. And it is annoying, especially because this dealer has been around for a while, and there's a couple other things on his booth that's like that. So with the Pet Sounds, I said how much for the Pet Sounds, because the other Beach Boys, although they were in good shape, I had multiples of. And I asked I asked how much for the records, and he's like, "Well, make me an offer." And I'm like, "Okay, well," I said, it was $10 a record across the board, which I thought, okay, for not for the Pet Sounds, but for a guy who doesn't deal in records, would have been like, "Oh, okay." Nope, didn't happen. He said, "No, no, that's too little." And I'm like, "Okay, well then, how much for just this one?" Which was the Pet Sounds. It's a stereo Canadian copy, pretty clean. It was going to be for my personal collection because it's cleaner than the one that I had. And he said, I don't know, I don't know. And I said, "Okay, how about $25 for this one?" And yes, I know how much it's worth. And he said, "No, no, that's it." I'm like, "Well, how much do you want for it?" And he's like, "I don't know. You need to make an offer." I'm like, "I've made two." And he's like, "Well, some other guy offered me $100 for all of them." And I'm like, "Okay, well, that's a pretty strong offer, and you didn't take it?" And he's like, "No, because I think it's worth more." I'm like, "Okay, why do you think that?" And he couldn't tell me. He just said he had a feeling. He is a postcard dealer. He knows how to use the internet. So in the end, I offered him $45 for that copy of Pet Sounds, and he said no. I offered him $50 for that copy of Pet Sounds, and he said no. I offered him 75, and I had no intention of paying him that. If he said yes, I was just going to walk away because at that point I was peed off. And he said no. So there you go. Sometimes that happens. That's why I don't have Pet Sounds in here, which is a shame because it's a record that should be in everybody's collection. Even though I have two copies, mono and stereo, that stereo isn't better than mine. But what I did find was a dealer there who had records, and his wife said, "We don't want to carry the crate around anymore. They're kind of older." They're like, "Every record is $3 regardless of price." So I went through and grabbed some stuff. So we've got fantastic Earth, Wind, and Fire record, Electric Light Orchestra. This is bread and butter stuff, okay? This is stuff that sells in my store on the regular basis. And at $3, I'll pick this up all day long. The Guess Who, Heart, CCR, Eagles, Clapton Slow Hand. It's a little bit rougher on the bottom, but one of the best Beach Boys albums that isn't Pet Sounds that often gets overlooked, Surf's Up. It is so good. Another copy of the Eagles, One of These Nights. Another copy of CCR. Another great Beach Boys record, Love You. It is really phenomenal. Aerosmith's Draw the Line. The Woodstock soundtrack. And that is it. So those were all $3 a piece, which, you can't really go too far wrong with $3 a piece. I did check them. They're all pretty clean. The covers, maybe a little bit rougher. So you probably heard my speech about changing my buying habits, especially at shows like this, because I can no longer ship into the United States anymore. Because the de minimis ruling, which was over 100 years old, the president of the United States decided to eliminate that. And so now it would be like a 35% tariff that I would have to pay to ship into the United States. And I'm sorry, that's just beyond anything anymore. And I've actually have seen some other American collectors now, actually, I think, beginning to understand that and don't seem too happy about it. One guy was on a tin group, tobacco tin group, and a tin that he had been looking at for a while and decided to pull the trigger on eBay, all of a sudden said no shipping in the United States, and he got the same response from the seller when he contacted them, said, "Yeah, I can't do it anymore, unfortunately. It's not possible." So that, again, is a bit unfortunate. I hate when politics gets in the way of hobbies and trade and things like that. I understand big business, but come on. Anyways, here we go. So these, I asked the guy how much, because I didn't see that at the bottom. And he looked at them and said, $5 a piece. And I said, okay, that's great. Now what these are they use the exact same images that were used on the 1960s Parker set, which is a set of all of the Indy 500 winners. And they're a fantastic, if you're a car guy, they're fantastic. These were made bigger. He's got on there 60 Parkhurst Indy cards. These were not issued by Parkhurst. These were actually put into the Magnavox wall projector. So this wall projector, you could put these, they would sit down into it. I should bring one out because I have one somewhere. And then that image will be projected up onto the wall. And for some reason or other, they did a lot. They used almost all the same images as Parkhurst card sets. They have a bird set that is the same as a Parkhurst set. They have a set of animals that is the same. And they also did this. It's a shame they didn't do hockey. But the difference is that these are larger format. And on either side, they have a car. No explanation as to what it is. But if you know, you know. And these are in excellent shape. And he said $5 a piece. So I said, okay. And I bought them because he had $15 each on some of them. And, you know, that's still a good deal. Now, keep in mind, my American friends who are watching, $5 a piece is like $3.75 or close to $4 each US. Which for Indy cars, you know, and that good a shape from that age is great. So I had to shift more thinking, all right, well, I'm not going to be shipping in the United States as much. So really, I should be thinking more about Canadians and what Canadians like. We love hockey. Now, this is a Boys Own magazine from 1938. And it is from the UK. And you say Bournville Cocoa by Cadbury's advertising on it. And unusually, it has a hockey cover on it. It is it's a great image. It's a story called The Phantom Puck. And it was sold in Canada for 15 cents, so February 38th. So I bought that. Now, some of these prices on here you'll see is $12. What happens when this is one guy who I bought pretty much everything off, and in this group over here. And then at the end, he usually gives me about a 20% discount. So most of the stuff would be quite a bit cheaper than what appears on here. And again, Canadian pricing. That is, I love the artwork of Peter Max. And I didn't know about this. So I guess he did a lot of the artwork for the production of Paint Your Wagon. And here it was a lot of his artwork that was used, and he did the program for it. This was $4, and it's not worth a huge amount of money. It's probably around $25, $30. But for $4, I couldn't pass it up. Again, Canadian. So yeah, I believe all the rest of these are definitely from that same guy. So I have learned, and again, you're always learning in this business. Like, I've had a retail store here for 20 years. Things still surprise me. This was one that surprised me, is that paper cutouts are starting to sell. Especially from the 30s and 40s, like pre-war stuff, especially for the sports cutouts, if they're done well, can go well. I sold a Babe Ruth for one of his home run records that was from, I think, his third or fourth year with the Yankees, and it went for $75 US. Now, again, this is, you can see on the other side there, it's just a paper cutout, but it's Christy Mathewson, Hall of Famer, like one of the best pitchers of all times. And this is when he became the manager of the Reds, so it's a little later in his career. But I'm sure if I do a little more research on it, just to reverse on that image, I can find out the exact year. But I'm figuring that's got to be sometime 1940s, I would guess. And again, it's just an educated guess. Let's see through here. This is not from that same guy. This was a bunch of things that I bought from another person. Now, as you know, I have a nostalgia store, but my primary dealings were in paper and on eBay. So again, that will slow down drastically. So I didn't buy as much stuff, but I always pick up packaging when I can. These were about $1 a piece. And these are ice cream bags from an Ontario town there, Brantford. I bought them all because, again, at $1 a piece, you can't go too far wrong. And then this is a tattoo that was an insert. WWF Coliseum video tattoos, which I wasn't super familiar with, but I believe that's 1990. So that's kind of neat. What else did I get there? Oh, this is an early, too early, probably in-store signs for Dunlop bicycle tires. So this one is the Dunlop Trophy Race has been contested for 23 years without interruption. And for all these years, Dunlop bicycle tires have well, you can read it. This is early. Again, same kind of thing. I would figure probably pre-war. And I'm going to have to look up that bicycle trophy race because there you go again. Here's instant number 2. I imagine there would have been both of them. And it's claiming that the title is a quarter-century-old trophy race and has been as staunch and as exclusive as the quality of Dunlop tires. So, again, not 100% sure what it is, but it wasn't very much. It was a couple of bucks. This is a 96 Canadian tire winter catalog, still sealed in the bag, and it's got Mario on there. Super Mario. Look at him. Mario Lemieux. And you can see his achievements at the time. That was $6, but again, at the end, I got a deal. This is the Charles Atlas. It is the entire package for what you would send away for. You remember how you saw those Charles Atlas lesson things in the backs of comic books? I believe that is what this is. That's probably not a real Charles Atlas thing or autograph on there. It's probably like an auto pen or something like that. But it's really cool. And there are a bunch of all of his different lessons in there. Probably more than 10. So at $10, which ended up being less, no-brainer again for me. I say no-brainer a lot, but, you know, I'm going to be learning soon what is and what isn't good. This was $5. It's a great cup from '78. I mean, and it's a classic. Back then, it was all about the Alouettes, Montreal Alouettes. From my American friends, this is basically our Super Bowl. And the Edmonton Eskimos, who are now known as the Edmonton Elks. And that was $5. So, and this is probably my favorite thing. For people outside of Canada, the 72 series wasn't, you know, it didn't really mean as much as what it does to Canadians. Like, this is one of our sporting moments. The 72 Henderson goal when we beat the Russians in this series. And it was a series where I believe 4 games in Canada, 4 games in Russia. And there was that whole Cold War thing was still hanging around. And this was like legitimately like a proxy culture war between, you know, communism and Canadian democracy. And it meant a lot. And the Russians came out, and we always think of hockey as our game, although the Americans have made huge leaps in the last few years, so congratulations on that. But we still think of it as our game. And the fact that the Russians were doing it in a different kind of way, you know, a lot of the NHL players smoked. A lot of them, you know, drank. The Russians weren't like that. I mean, they might have drank, but they were into calisthenics and training and science. And the Canadians weren't really, you know, that wasn't at the time the way things were. So there were a lot of things going on around this game. And I believe the Russians took 3 of the ones in Canada, and then we went back, and I think we swept all the ones in Moscow. So if you didn't get to see the games, things you could send away, because all the games were on TV, even in the schools, I remember, I heard, I was too young, but I remember people telling me stories about how they stopped everything and then got TVs into the gyms and gathered all the kids around to watch the game. Um, and you could send away for this official home TV program for the Moscow series. And it's not super hard to find, but it is a little harder to find. I actually have one signed by Henderson, and it's a vintage signature too, so that was kind of a good thing. But I pick them up whenever I can, and again, he bought it for $5, but he put it at 18. And in the end, I think I had a 20% discount across the board on his stuff. This is the one that I don't know much about, but sometimes I'll just take a flyer on things like this. The Bank of Carling, and I believe this is Carling beer, and it's sort of their funny money, and I don't know that much about it, but here's another one, and they've actually looked at it, and Sparky Wheeler played hockey in Kitchener-Waterloo, and it doesn't say anything else about it, but you can bank on Carling 100%. And it was sort of an advertising piece, probably local, because Carling, I believe, was based out of Kitchener-Waterloo. So interesting piece of ephemera. I've never seen these before. That's why I bought them, and I think it was $1 for the pair of them. So the one thing that sometimes you buy things emotionally, and I definitely bought these emotionally. These guys, here, you know what? I'm just going to dump it out. This bag is full of stuff. And it's full of gum packs. And most of them are from the 1980s. There's a few late 1970s stuff in here, and then some stuff into the 90s as well. We'll sort of go through it really quick. Now, the pack prices that are on here were what they were asking if you bought individually. In the end, I bought all the packs that they had, and they let me have them for $2.50 a pack across the board. Like some of them had 2 packs in them, and that was still $2.50. But we'll go through it. So, that is the Wacky Packages Stickers Series 8, and it's the O-Peachy one there. You can see the pop ring back on that. Here's a Wacky Packages from Topps, and it's the 3rd series, and you can see on there, that's actually a Topps one, and you can send away, there's the poster offer on the back. I love those things. This is what caught my eye because I loved this set as a kid, the Creature Features. This is a Topps one featuring the Mummy, black and white, cartoony cards on the inside. I believe, yeah, so the offer expires in 1980, so this would have probably been 1970s, late 79. Disney's The Black Hole, that's a Topps one. It's unusual that these are all Topps because I am in Canada, and generally it was O-Peachy was the thing. But I asked the guy where he got them from, and he said it was part of a lot that he bought. So this is 77 Fleer doing the Gong Show. You can actually see the gum outside there. These are all sealed. Jaws 2, Topps. None of these are particularly crazy rare, but it was just such a fun group. And at $2.50 each, I was pretty happy with that. I'm not going to make any huge money off this, but man, it was such a hit of nostalgia for this. So there's Fleer. I believe, yeah, these are basketball stickers back in the day. Look at some of those. Like, look at the Nuggets guy. That's awesome. This is one that I hadn't seen before. Wanted posters. And I thought they were earlier, but it's 1980. And again, it's Topps. And I got a bunch of those. Let's go through this. These are pretty cool too. And he had these priced way high. Again, in the end, because I bought everything, they dumped it down. And that's honestly one of the best ways to buy. If you're buying individual, you're going to pay full price. If you start buying in bulk, because a lot of dealers, this was stuff that was probably in a lot that he didn't care about. So when, they get offers that start flowing in at, I don't know how much it was in the end. It was around the 100 something mark. That's $100 they, don't have to wait to get back. Now this one does have O-Peachy on the back there. So, and those are pretty cool, actually. I really like those. So there's another one of those Wanda posters. Topps Batman the movie. You can see the back of it there. You can send away for the full color Batman magazine. A couple more of these guys. There's wacky packages. There's 2 of them in there, but I think these are for the stickers, because you get sticker albums with them. There's another Batman. There's another Monster initials. There's another Batman with the Joker on the cover of the wrapper. Rocky 2. And again, it's Topps. Wacky packages, stickers. That's the O-Pee-Chee version, because you can see there's French language on there. Super Pac-Man from Fleer. Jaws 3D with the viewers inside. These are a little later, but another one. Another one. There's another one there. Another Batman with Joker on the cover. There's another Gong Show. Another Batman with Batman on the cover. Cat stickers. This is one I probably would have left behind if I was buying individual, but what, you know, why not? Another Batman, Joker, Gong Show. The classic Desert Storm. Oh, pro set. There is another wacky package sticker. That's the first series, and that is Topps. Yep. And 8 Men Out. I didn't even know they made this series of cards, so that's kind of interesting. I wonder if it had, you know, anyways. Jaws 3D. Gong Show. What are you? Batman Returns. And that's the O-Pee-Chee one, because it says O-Pee-Chee right on it. 3 Dick Tracy's from O-Pee-Chee. And then Young Indiana Jones Pro Sets. There are 3 of them there. Again, this stuff is from the 80s and then going into the junk wax era of the 90s. But they're, you know, when they're $2.50 a piece, and again, that's Canadian. So for my American friends, you're looking around $1.75 a pack. I know some of you are going to be like, oh, that's too much. But you know what? For the nostalgia sake of it, thinking I'm not going to lose any money, certainly. And sometimes, like I said, you do end up buying things emotionally. And this one was in my wheelhouse because, as you guys who follow the channel know, I collect a plethora of things. But the one, my first big, as a kid, love was cards. My parents collected tobacco cards. And they amassed a pretty big collection at a time when not many people were that interested and knew what they were. But as a side thing, because a lot of the same dealers who got the tobacco cards would also have gum cards, I started collecting cards. And I dealt in sports and didn't deal, but I collected sports and non-sports and, you know, built up that collection. My parents, because I was what is commonly known as a show brat, my parents would, you know, give me some money and say, go get something. And it would keep me occupied and they could look for stuff for themselves. And it is a wonderful childhood memory that I have. You know, I loved, especially when I was a child, traveling with my parents in the car, you know, listening to the radio in the back seat. And, you know, sometimes there'd be baseball games on. It was just a great experience. As I got to be a teenager, I hated it because teenagers hate everything. And my parents would, probably not the best idea, but trusted me enough to leave me at home on the weekends in high school while they went off to some shows, because I had sort of slowed down over this, mainly because of, you know, girls. The girls were suddenly important. But after university, I got back into it hardcore, and I've been, you know, running collections ever since. I've been on eBay since 1998. Unfortunately, that looks like that is gonna not, you know, that's gonna be a troublesome thing going forward. And I've had this store, my store, for 20 years now. I'll put the links to the store down there. If you guys like this content, you know, feel free to subscribe, because I do this, you know, it's a lot of records, but I do a lot of other things too, like my collectibles when I hit the collectible shows. So if you're into collectibles and nostalgia and records and vintage clothing and mid-century modern furniture, and I can keep going. Feel free to subscribe. If you have any comments, positive or negative, you know, I got a fairly thick skin, just leave them in there. That'd be great, because I love the comments. I try to answer every single one, and I think for the most part I do. And yeah, I hope you guys are able to find some cool stuff when you're digging in the, you know, dusty places. Bye.